Jutta Fuchs had circled the date weeks in advance. June 26, 1993, was meant to mark the start of a new chapter. She had found a small apartment in Bremen, signed the lease, and already assembled the child's bed. She had carried over boxes with clothes and toys in the days before. Everything was prepared for her and her 2-year-old son to finally live on their own. On the morning of June 26th, the apartment stood exactly as she had left it, untouched and waiting. The apartment had been chosen carefully. After deciding to leave the shared home in Bremen, Jutta wanted a fresh start for herself and her little boy. In the days leading up to the move, she had already spent time there arranging furniture and preparing the rooms. The move on June 26th was supposed to feel like a real beginning. Instead, the apartment remained frozen in the state she had left it. On the evening of 25th June 1993, Jutta spent time at the Vermisstenfall Treff, a neighborhood pub she knew well. She had been with her son earlier that day. She mentioned to someone that she still had a few things to pack before the move the next morning. She left the pub in the late evening, with the clear intention of returning home. That evening became the last confirmed time anyone who knew her saw her. The next morning, the new apartment stayed empty. No one answered the phone at her previous address. Relatives began calling. No one picked up. What began as confusion slowly turned into something heavier as the hours passed without any sign of her. On the afternoon of 27th June, a driver stopped at a parking area along the A27. On the ground lay a handbag. Inside were Jutta's identity card, driver's license, and bank card. All the papers were soaked through. Even though it had not rained for several days that summer, the discovery changed the nature of the search immediately. Police secured the handbag the same day. They confirmed the documents belonged to Jutta Fuchs. Investigators began searching the immediate area and returned to the Vermisstenfall Treff to speak with staff and regulars who had been there on the evening of 25th June. One witness now recalled that Jutta had seemed distracted in the final minutes before she left the pub, a detail she had not mentioned in her first statement. Investigators noted the new information and compared it with the timing of the handbag's discovery the following day. At home, relatives waited through the first nights. They left a light on in the hallway and kept the telephone within reach. The 2-year-old son slept in his usual bed at first. On the second night, he woke and asked for his mother. Relatives went to him and spoke quietly until he settled again. He began asking for his mother at specific times, when he woke up, and again when the front door opened in the evening. At first, relatives answered calmly. Over time, they began redirecting him to small tasks, asking him to set the table or choose his clothes. The questions continued. The answers grew shorter and more practiced. The new apartment stayed exactly as Jutta had left it. No one moved the boxes. No one slept in the child's bed. The calendar page with the circled date remained on the wall. Investigators visited the apartment and documented its exact condition. It became a quiet, untouched witness to her absence. Police expanded their searches along the highway and in surrounding areas. Detection dogs were brought in to cover ground the teams had already walked. Officers collected statements from anyone who had seen Jutta in the final days. Every new detail was logged and checked against the timeline of the handbag discovery. Days passed without new information. The family tried to keep the son's daily routines as steady as possible. He still asked for his mother at wake-up, and when the front door opened, relatives answered and guided him back to small activities. The prepared apartment remained untouched, while investigators continued comparing every witness account with the condition of the documents found on the A27. Investigators now had the handbag, the soaked documents, and one new memory of distraction at the pub. They had the exact time Jutta was last seen, and the exact time the handbag appeared on the A27. But the hours between those 2 points remained blank. What happened in those missing hours stayed unknown and would shape everything that followed. Those hours between the Vegasacker treff on the evening of 25th June 1993 and the discovery of the handbag on the A27 the next afternoon were never explained. Investigators had the timeline. They had the condition of the documents. They had one witness memory of distraction. None of it closed the gap. What happened to Jutta Fuchs in those missing hours remained unknown, and would remain unknown for more than 30 years. In the years immediately after 1993, the family focused on giving Jutta's young son as much stability as possible. Relatives shared the daily care and tried to answer his questions in ways he could understand at each age. Birthdays and school events were celebrated. Photographs of his mother stayed in the home so she would not become a stranger to him. At the same time, the family remained in contact with the police and passed on any new information. Life continued in small, ordinary rhythms. But the absence of answers was always present in conversations and decisions. As he grew older, the questions became more precise and harder to answer. He wanted to know why there were no recent photos, why his mother had never come back, and what had really happened to her. Relatives answered as honestly as they could at each stage, adjusting how much they revealed depending on his age. The absence of his mother shaped his childhood in quiet but lasting ways. In 2008, the case received renewed public attention when it was featured on the long-running program Aktenzeichen XY. Ungelöst. Investigators presented the handbag, the items from the Tietjensee, and the timeline, and appealed to the public for new information. The broadcast brought a wave of tips from across the country. Most leads led nowhere, but for the family, it meant the case was still being actively investigated, even 15 years later. Watching the reconstruction brought both renewed hope and renewed pain. By 2013, prosecutors took a formal step. They filed charges against Jutta's former long-term partner in order to prevent the statute of limitations from expiring. This decision meant the case could move toward a trial even without a body. For the family, it represented progress after 20 years of waiting. The son, now an adult, followed the development closely. The charges marked a shift from a long, mostly private investigation to a public legal process. The road to trial took several years. A higher regional court eventually ordered the proceedings to go ahead. Prosecutors and defense examined the existing evidence: the handbag from the A27, the items from the Tietjensee, and all witness statements collected over the decades. Old statements were re-evaluated. For the family, every court date brought a mixture of anticipation and tension. They had lived with the case for a quarter of a century. Now, they would hear it presented in detail in a formal setting. One of the most visible actions during the trial period was the decision to drain the Tietjensee. In October 2018, investigators pumped out approximately 35 million liters of water so they could search the lakebed thoroughly. The operation was extensive and drew local attention. Despite the scale of the effort, no additional evidence was found. The drained lake stood as a powerful symbol of how far investigators were still willing to go, even after 25 years, to look for answers that had so far remained out of reach. During the trial, some witnesses struggled to recall events clearly after so many years. Earlier statements were compared with current testimony, and inconsistencies appeared. The court had to weigh these accounts carefully. On November 20th, 2018, the verdict was delivered. The defendant was acquitted. The prosecution had ultimately requested acquittal due to the state of the evidence. For the family, the outcome brought a complex mix of emotions. After years of waiting for a trial, they now face the reality that the legal process had not provided the resolution they had hoped for. Jutta's son grew up without his mother. Relatives supported him through childhood and adolescence, while trying to answer his questions honestly as he became old enough to understand. School years, friendships, and later adult milestones were reached without her presence. As an adult, he still looks at the old photographs. He knows the timeline of the handbag and the lake items. He knows the court reached no conviction. He continues to live with the absence of answers, a quiet, permanent part of his life. As of 2026, the disappearance of Jutta Fuchs remains an officially unsolved case. No body has ever been recovered. The 2018 trial ended with an acquittal, but that legal outcome did not answer the central question of what happened after she was last seen on 25th June 1993. The physical traces, the handbag on the A27, and the items from the Tietjensee remain the clearest documented evidence. The questions that began in those first nights have endured through every stage of the investigation and every year that followed. Jutta Fuchs prepared a new home and a new start for herself and her son in the summer of 1993. She circled a date on the calendar and arranged even the smallest details. She was last seen at the Vegasacker Treff on the evening of 25th June. More than 30 years later, her family still does not know what happened in the hours after that last sighting, or why she never returned for the move she had planned so carefully. The questions remain. The answers have not come.